Hey guys, welcome back to What the Fat. Today I have on an absolute savage, someone who's literally Keto Savage. You guys probably know him on Instagram, but one of the most humble, incredible, beyond keto, just human beings I've ever met in my entire life. So, brother, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate having you on.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate the kind words. I don't know what I did to deserve them, but I appreciate it.
You're just you, man. You are Robert Sikes, the Keto Savage, an incredible human being.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
You got it, man. So tell everyone if they've been under a rock and they don't know who you are, what you're doing. Can you tell people a little bit about your journey, your story, like coming up, and kind of how you found keto?
Yeah, so it starts. I mean, I've been lifting, like I'm kind of in the bodybuilding space. So I've been a natural bodybuilder now since I was a junior in high school, and I was just super small, super scrawny, and I don't know how in depth you want to go on the background story here, but we lived way out in the country, so I was literally lifting weights with like makeshift pieces of tractor equipment that we had in the shop, and watching YouTube videos for instructional tutorials, and did that all throughout high school. Wasn't keto obviously at the time, just did everything wrong. I had like all the Tupperwares. I carried a class with me. Everybody thought I was a weirdo, and did that all through high school. And then college, I did my first competition in college as a sophomore. Fell in love with the sport of bodybuilding. Had a lot of success with it. Developed some eating disorders and just did a lot of things the wrong way. Like I lost 70 pounds in 3 months for my first show. And I came in super lean and ripped, but I lost a lot of muscle in the process. And I did everything wrong. I didn't really have a mentor. I didn't have a coach. And then did that several times. Now, I did 3 or 4 competitions following that traditional bro dieting approach, and then realized there had to be a better way. So I started doing some research, started doing carbohydrate backloading, John Kiefer's protocol, and saw success with that, but noticed that I felt better before I introduced the carbs. So I just took out the carbs and basically did carb backloading minus the carbs. Didn't know what keto was, but realized that I felt really good and performed really well in the absence of carbs. And then I listened to, I believe, Tim Ferriss' podcast with Dom DiAgostino on there. That was my first introduction, that and Jimmy Moore's Keto Clarity book. And then I realized what it was I was doing, so I dove deeper into the research, and the rest is history, man. Like I figured out what it was and just started optimizing from there and haven't looked back since.
That's incredible, man. And it's interesting because bodybuilding is an animal within itself, and the sport. Jacob, my business partner, he does a lot in that world, and it's incredible because I think a lot of times you're always taught like, well, you need carbs, you need these carbs to put on muscle, and you see these guys like shoving down carbs, like they'll have their oatmeal or their rice literally just to try and fill out a little bit more, get like a higher peak on their bicep or whatever.
Oh yeah, man.
But you kind of went counter to that. So how is like, what was that like? Like, were people like, you're out of your mind? Like, where's your sweet potato? Like, bro, come on. Like, what were they like?
So I was definitely in the camp that was doing all the carbs. Like I was eating the rice, and I was broke. I was in college when I did my first prep, so I was eating those 1,000-calorie macho chimichangas you get at the gas stations, put them in the microwave, and you eat those. I mean, that was just the epitome of unhealthy. And I just felt miserable all the time. I was bloated. I got up to, I think, 230 pounds was my heaviest, and I'm only 5'7", 5'8", so I mean, that was not all muscle by any means. And I just felt terrible, so I did that. And then when I started doing the keto, like the first several months, man, I mean, everybody in the gym that I was training at, they're like, this guy's crazy, he's gonna lose all his muscle, because basically like I was doing like fasting and along with it. And basically the traditional bodybuilding approach is if you don't have like a protein shake 20 minutes after you're working out, you're just losing all your muscle, and that's what they think. So I'm not having carbs, I'm not eating every 3 hours like I used to, just totally going counter to everything that I've heard. And all my everything just started getting better. Like I was able to get better pumps. I was putting on muscle. I didn't have the GI distress that came with eating every 3 hours and high, boluses of carbohydrates. They all thought I was crazy though. And I'm like, well, shoot, I'm just going to do a competition and we'll truly put it to the test and see what happens. That's like the epitome of what you're able to do with your body. And there's so many things from a strategic standpoint that bodybuilders do with carbs going into a prep, like that peak week, like all of that is very manipulated. And I kept it keto the entire time through my off season, throughout my prep, throughout the peak week. And nobody knew what to expect. I didn't really have much of a platform at that time. I didn't have an audience, so I wasn't really documenting my journey that much. But when I got on stage, man, it was lights out. Like I was more ripped, better fullness, more vascularity than anybody by far. That's how I gained my pro card, and I just shut them all up in their tracks, man. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome, man. I didn't even know that. I didn't know you had a pro card. That's badass.
Yeah.
That's awesome,
Yeah.
man. Huge. And so one of the things, and I know you talk about this sometimes, but like I think a lot of people, like, they look at you and they'll be like, you have a ton of muscle, like you must have everything dialed in. But at some point, like even with the sport of bodybuilding, there's like a disordered eating mentality. Like you always are questioning, like, am I good enough? Like, did that ever weigh on you, like where you develop disordered eating patterns and it's like, this is like you said, this is just not healthy before you kind of stumbled into keto?
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I mean, after my first prep, like when I was up to 230, then lost all that weight in such a short period of time, like I was killing myself to lose 70 pounds in 3 months, man. Like I literally did everything wrong. I was doing, I think, 4 to 5 hours of training a day. At one point, I was down like 1,200 calories. I mean, literally everything you're not supposed to do, I was doing. And I'm glad that I did that because it gave me so much perspective on what I'm capable of mentally and physically. I mean, I became a freaking machine, man. But it was a really emotional time. Like I would literally be in the gym, super depleted, super exhausted, sleep deprived, studying for exams and whatnot. And my motivation would be like, this is about to get morbid here, but I would imagine somebody holding a gun to my parents' head saying, look, if you don't give me everything you've got, then that's it. And that's literally what got me through the workouts. And I would be crying in the gym. I would just feel so miserable. So I definitely pushed myself. And then after that was over and I gained all that weight back because I had a negative rebound like a lot of bodybuilders do, like I put on 20 pounds in 24 hours after that first show. So I looked at what all I had gone through to get there, and I just felt like, wow, I just wasted it. I threw it all away. And then I had this really skewed image of what I was worthy of, and then you start falling into like bad eating habits. You start coping with food, and then it was a dark place, man. I was depressed for sure.
Damn. So did you just say 20 pounds in 24 hours?
Yeah, so a lot of competitors.
Yeah, talk about that because I've seen this before. By the way, like this isn't unheard of, but I think some people will have a difficult time wrapping their mind around that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so when you're going through like peak week and you're super depleted, you've been dieting for several months, your body becomes a sponge. Especially if you're like manipulating with your electrolytes, you're cutting water, cutting sodium, whatever you're doing there at the end, your body becomes a sponge. So after this prep is over, after the show is said and done with, everybody goes and rejoices and goes out to a nice restaurant and just stuffs their face. And that's what I did. I went to Red Lobster, I believe was my first competition. We went to Red Lobster afterwards, and I had like 4 or 5 different entrees, like 3 frozen lemonades, like 2 desserts. And I was so sick and miserable, man. Like that whole night I couldn't sleep. I couldn't use the bathroom, couldn't puke. My body just soaked it all up, but then wouldn't expel any of it. So I literally just laid in the bathtub, an empty bathtub, just like in the fetal position, just in pain all night long. And I woke up the next morning, looked at the mirror, and I was super bloated. My face looked like it gained 30 pounds just in the cheeks of my face. And then all that work for so long out the window, I just totally started beating myself up internally, man. It was not good.
That's brutal. And that's far too common in the bodybuilding world. But
that's the norm.
It's the norm. And in the dieting world in general, I think, when people go on these super restrictive diets and then they don't realize that their metabolism adapts. And then they go into a spot where it's like, well, I'm just going to, you know what, it's time to blow it out. Or they go on vacation and they're like, screw everything I just did for the last 12 weeks. I'm just going to blow it out. And then they wake up and then it's like this punishment mentality of like, wow, I just did all this work and I just ruined it in 7 days by just not caring and going all out. So that's brutal. Yeah,
that's why I try, since then I've really become better at not putting a finish line on things. Like when there's a finish line on things, you work really hard for that finite time. Then when it's over, your mind just relaxes, but then you go into bad habits or you create new bad habits. Whereas now it's like there is no finish line. Death is the only finish line. So constantly be improving,
I love that. Death is the only finish line. Damn. That's good. That's good, man. Now, tell me a little bit about so you transition, you start going keto. How does that change your mindset? Like, how are you like, wow, this is a lot easier to I'm still able to get in a lot of the calories that I want to get into, but like I'm not seeing this point where I need to restrict down to 1,200 calories anymore. Like, what was that transition like?
So, like psychologically, I just became so much more in tune with my body and my mind, and I didn't have like it's still hard to get past some of those eating disorders. That takes a long time to get through that, but I was much more connected to what my body needed. I mean, there wasn't this big question of when you're screwed up and your leptin and ghrelin levels are just totally out of whack, like you literally have no concept of satiety. You don't know when you're hungry, you don't know when you're full. You're just totally disconnected from your food consumption. When I switched over to keto and everything kind of regulated, I was much more in tune with what my body needed, and then I could give it what it needed. So that helped tremendously with the eating disorders. And then from a performance standpoint, like I was putting more of an emphasis on quality foods and nutrient-dense foods as opposed to just the crap foods. I mean, flexible dieting and not intermittent fasting, but flexible dieting and if it fits your macros is like the main, dieting protocol used by most bro dieters. And I think that is like it at its core is not a bad thing, but it's become a bad thing over the years. And now it's like this sexy new phenomenon to be able to eat Pop-Tarts and ice cream and drink beer and then look ripped. And that's what people are striving for. And it's just like wrong. I mean, it's not healthy. That's not the epitome of health. And here I am as a natural bodybuilder trying to be the best and healthy person and version of myself that I can. So I really started putting a focus on that when I was keto, and then everything just got better from there.
That's huge, and I'm glad you brought that up because I've had friends that are like that. They followed the if it fits your macros, and they've transitioned because they started seeing me do keto several years ago, and they're like, "Oh, I'm going to do keto, but I'm going to do it if it fits your macro style." And I shit you not, like they would literally wait till the end of the day, and they wouldn't eat any carbs throughout the day, and then they'd have like 5 sweetest fish at the end of the day. I'm like, that's not how it works. Like
Yeah.
that's not healthy by any means. Like you're saving these carbs for and they just didn't understand the concept. But I think a lot of times people fall into this if it fits your macros. And I agree. Like the core of it can be good and foundationally if built in with proper context. But it's become like this Pop-Tart, fit in whatever you can as long as it's a macro. All macros are the same sort of concept. And that's rough, man. I'm glad you brought that up.
I mean, there's definitely some truth and merit to what the concepts are that they're pushing, which is, I mean, calories do matter. Calories count. Macronutrients are very important. But that doesn't matter if you take everything else and blow it out of proportion, give it no context. I mean, the nutrient density and the micronutrients count tremendously. So if you're just looking at macros, I mean, there was literally somebody arguing with me the other day that 1,000 calories of Ben & Jerry's is better than 1,000 calories of a Keto Brick, and I just like about blew up on him.
Oh my god!
But we got that resolved, and all's good now. So
that's crazy, man. But that's a great point. Like, and there's studies documenting this. So like, this is the thing because there's a lot of big proponents who are big proponents of like, oh, just all calories are the same. And I agree, like at some level, calories do matter. But if I were to take, there's studies showing like if I were to take 100 grams of wheat protein versus 100 grams of whey protein, the body composition changes would be drastically different. Yet it's 100 grams of protein. So people just don't understand, and that's why I love what you do and what you put out is like there needs to be proper context around some of these things.
Yeah, and that became so clear once I started switching over and doing keto. And then also, I mean, because if you look at it like this, when I was doing carbs versus when I was doing keto, from a caloric standpoint, my intake didn't change that much. I mean, they're pretty much, neck and neck. But I changed the macronutrient makeup and the ratios of those foods, those calories, and it made all the difference in the world. So to say it wouldn't matter, I mean, it's just there's no merit for that.
It's crazy. Now, how has your approach changed? Like, what were you eating when you first started dabbling with keto? What were some of the things you were doing versus now? Kind of like your approach. Has that changed or has it stayed the same?
No, it's changed. I mean, I feel like when people first start keto, they're super excited about it. There's all these cookbooks out there, all these recipes out there, and they wind up going down the rabbit hole of all the keto desserts and the keto treats. So I was doing that. Like we would make, keto cheesecake like every week. We'd make keto ice cream. We're like trying to find all these carb alternatives, but still like dessert keto basically. And I did that. I think it's a good stepping stone. Like if that makes the transition easier for people, more power to you. But you don't want that to become the base and the foundation. So like the more adapted I've gotten and the better I've become with like understanding nutrient density and quality of the foods I'm eating, I've pretty much phased those out entirely. I eat pretty much, a carnivore-esque approach to keto. I put an emphasis on organ meats, but I also try and get some, some vegetation in. I'm not like a hardcore carnivore where like if you eat, a sprig of grass, you're doomed to hell. Like I eat what I want to eat, but I try to give some variety. And then, I mean, I'll have the Keto Brick, and that's obviously not carnivore. So I keep it mixed up, man. But I don't have a lot of the noise calories from just like keto desserts and stuff anymore.
Now, do you do like intermittent fasting? Like how many meals typically do you have per day, or do you condense the window at all, or no?
No, I do. I have about 2 meals, sometimes 1 meal if my calories are lower. And then if I'm in a building phase like I am now, like right now, I'm taking in 4,000 calories a day. So I've bumped that up to 3 meals a day because it's hard for me to get that many calories in with 2 meals. So 3 meals a day now.
That's awesome. And so I think a lot of times people don't even like your workouts are intense. I follow like you post them on your story. I'm like, dude, that would bury me. Like that's impressive. But so what have you noticed? Like right now you're in a building phase. You're eating like 4,000 calories. Are you steadily increasing? Like how do you track that? How do you track progress with that?
So I track, like I've got a cycle for how I go about things. Like as a natural bodybuilder, I've always got a goal, whether it's a building phase and my goal is to build muscle and see an increase in my strength, or a cutting phase in which I want to just like bring in a better package for show day. So I'm always working on some kind of goal, and I'm measuring that via, DEXA scans, pictures, measurements, weight moved, et cetera, et cetera. So me being in a building phase now, I'm ramping up calories, kind of seeing how my body responds in the training. I used to not document any of my training. I used to just be totally instinctive with it, but I'm starting to track that just to, have a pulse on it. But then, yeah, I'm basically just tracking that to see how things are improving. Then as I transition into a cut, I'll put less emphasis on building muscle and more on just maintaining muscle. A lot of people trying to build muscle and lose body fat at the same time, but they kind of compete for one another. Mm-hmm. So I've always said it's important to have one primary goal and then put your emphasis on that, and then anything else is just a bonus.
And some of the things like your volume is really impressive. Like some of the volume that you lift, but also you do what's your cardio? You go on like pretty long runs, right? Do you do like a couple mile runs? How do you incorporate that in with your training?
So honestly, I do runs not even so much for the cardio perspective, but because that's my only time where I can break free and listen to podcasts, listen to an audiobook. So I'll go for a run just to kind of zone out, and I do those a few times a day. I was running every single day. Each week I'd increase by a mile, and the goal was to get up to 10 miles a day. And I got up to, I think, 6 miles a day, but then I broke my foot. I broke my toe, dropped the weight on it. So had to kind of put a pause on that. But yeah, as far as cardio goes, man, like when I'm doing a prep, the only form of cardio I do is Stairmaster. That's pretty much it. Like I try to control as many variables as I can when I'm prepping, and that's a good way to keep things concise. But I respect and appreciate endurance athletes, and I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand with keto. I mean, it really works well together. So like last year I ran a marathon with zero training just to see if I could do it, and I did it.
That's
so
insane.
It was pretty good. I liked it.
That's awesome, man. And going back to some of the food that you eat, do you do like homegrown stuff? Like do you kind of cultivate any of your own food? Like what does that look like? Or do you focus on grass fed, grass finished? Or are you just like, whatever I can get, I can get?
No, I mean, if it kind of depends on what your budget is. Like if I was broke, and some people are broke and then they'll argue that they don't have money for grass fed, so they just eat carbs. It's like, no, let's not do that. I mean, right. Get what you can afford. If you can only afford cheap quality meat, that's still better than high quality carbs. So for what I do is I try and have, I'll do grass fed, grass finished. I do a lot of hunting as well. I think, from a nutrient density standpoint, harvesting your own food and, connecting with what you're eating and actually taking that wild game from the outdoors, that's like the pinnacle of nutrient density right there. So I'm actually getting big into bow hunting right now. I'm practicing my bow every day. So hopefully I'll be able to fill some tags this year and bring some elk or mule deer back home.
Love it. I love it, man. And I think that's an important piece. And, it's a fascinating topic because, I mean, obviously vegans, vegetarians will have a lot of issues with that concept. But I always say, like, listen, at the end of the day, for me, like, I went hunting a couple times with some of my buddies, and there's nothing that makes me appreciate the food I eat more than, like you said, like killing your own meat and harvesting it and eating it. And I think at some point everyone who eats meat should go through that process to understand, like, it's not just I think people look at it sometimes, they're just like, oh, I'm just eating this because I have to. But like every time I eat now, I'm like, there was a sacrifice that was made to fuel me. So I have to go out and be a better human being. Like, it's just a cycle of life. And like, I look at that and I look at guys like you who are out there like literally hunting, and you gather your own food. And I love that. And I appreciate it because I think it brings a new sense of what I eat is here to nourish me. Like, it's not just, oh, I'm just eating this and it's a waste product. It's like, no, like there was a sacrifice that was made to nourish me. And like you said, it's ultimate, like, you really understand nutrient density when you're harvesting your own food.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. And hunters get a bad rap from like the vegans, obviously.
Right.
And there's some definite bad hunters. There's bad apples in all groups, and there's people that don't, respect the animals that they harvest. But as a whole, I would argue that most hunters are 100% very conservationist minded, and they put the animals at the top of the totem pole, and they really try and care for the land and be good stewards of the land.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. Now, you work with a lot of clients, particularly in like you coach a lot of individuals. Are most of them bodybuilding? Like, are most of them focused on bodybuilding, or do you have a wide variety?
Interestingly enough, my largest demographic of clientele is middle-aged women, and I don't market to them at all. But I think that's just the keto space as a whole, probably mostly comprised of middle-aged women. But I definitely try and gravitate towards competitors because that's what I'm passionate about. That's kind of what I specialize in. But yeah, a lot of the principles that I work with on competitors carry over and apply to just everyday people trying to be healthier. So there's not really a huge disconnect there.
And what do you see as the biggest challenge? So a lot of them, because I'm sure you work a lot with them on getting them started on the right track with like a ketogenic diet. Like, what are some of the biggest challenges you see with a lot of the clients you work with?
Man, it all goes back to mindset, kind of like with everything in life. And there's so many people, no matter what diet they're following, that all have a short game mindset. They just want the quick fix. And we could totally turn this into a mindset podcast. But for me, what I preach, both with keto, with business, with everything, is have a long game approach. Become the master at that thing. Chip away at it every single day. Find something that you can sustain chipping away at every single day. And then if you do that, that act compounded over years and years and years is going to be freaking impressive. So find what you can do and then just keep chipping away at it.
That's amazing. And I think a lot of times we live in a world right now where everyone gets so distracted. Like, it's like the shiny new object. And so they lose that. They lose that mentality of like, actually, I was listening to David Goggins the other day, and
I love David Goggins.
That guy fires me up, man. It's unbelievable. But he was talking about the dog mentality. And I love that kind of analogy in a sense that, like, my dog, like, if I were to sit here and consistently feed him, he would eat and literally probably throw up and continue eating. But if you look at people who get to a point, and this is why I love what you said before, like, death is the only finish line. When you put an end on something, like, people get there and they become complacent. They're like, oh, cool, I'm here. Like, I don't need to go any further. But like, that dog mentality is like, no, I'm still hungry as hell when I want to get there. And I love that you take that approach with some of your clients. It's like, no, like, start chipping away at it. Like, be 1% better every single day. And the end result at the end of the day, whenever your time comes, is going to be really damn impressive.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I mean, you look at any aspect of your life, and it doesn't have to be just nutrition or fitness, but you look at anything, relationships, business, career, anything. And if you have that mentality and you put it forward in every single day, every single thing you do, I mean, nobody else does that. Like, I love doing hard things that nobody else has the balls to do, because it's just like, I've got like a bullheaded, stubborn mentality, and I don't mind doing it. Like, I love things that take forever.
I love that, man. And you have an incredible support system with your wife. How has that played an impact on kind of your entire mindset, everything that you guys do? Because you guys not only obviously you guys are training together all the time. I love watching that, but you also like have a business together, and you guys, I feel like you're just the dynamic duo. How does that play into everything that you do?
It's kind of crazy, man. Like, when I met Crystal, she was a barista at a coffee stand 2 blocks up from the house that I purchased in Washington State when I moved up there with the railroad. And she wasn't into fitness. She wasn't into any of that stuff. Her dream in life was to have a piece of land and then raise pigs. Like, that's all she wanted to do. And it's funny because I don't feel like me I haven't pushed her to do anything. She's just kind of fallen into it and then just seen how she could excel at certain things, and then she becomes passionate about it and then just builds from it. But I mean, she's my best friend, man. She's my partner in crime. Like we train together, we live together, we live in a warehouse. I mean, there's not too many women that you can convince to do that with. I mean, for the first 8 months of living in this warehouse, there was no shower, so we had to drive to the gym just to take a shower every day. I mean, like we're doing things that most couples don't do, most people don't do, and to me, it's like we're building, like, life is a storybook. Every single year is a chapter, and the story that we're writing is pretty damn good. I would love to read this book.
Yeah, me too, man. I love watching it. I love watching it transpire because, like, I remember following you way back when it was like, oh, Keto Brick was just like getting started, and like watching the progression of that. Like, I'm super excited to like look 5-10 years down the road and be like, dude, that fucking guy is just still crushing it. Like, both of you are still crushing it, and I love that because you're inspiring people to, like, on multiple facets. It's beyond a keto bodybuilding conversation. I think it's multiple facets of what you do and like the individual you are. Kind of like what I said earlier at the beginning of the podcast. Like, that's a huge kudos to you and who you are as a human.
I appreciate that, man. We were talking the other day and about like just the future, where we wanted to take things in life and the foundation that we want to build things upon. And it all comes back to like integrity and doing things the right way. Like in business especially, everybody has like a cutthroat mentality. They have that short game mentality, make a quick buck. And when you do that, like, people can see through that, especially with social media. People can see through the bullshit. But if you have that long game approach and you care about every single relationship, every single interaction, that compounds. So I answer every DM, I answer every email, I care about every single person. And then like people pick up on that. They recognize it as truth. They recognize it as not this facade, not a mask. And I can build this business on that good integrity, that good foundation. And because of that, I'm not worried about what we're going to be like in 10 years. It's just going to keep getting better.
And I see that, and I like you're a living, breathing example of that, and someone that I could see that even before I even met you the first time. Like, just watching how you are and how you interact on social media, I'm like, this guy's as authentic and transparent as anyone I've ever seen in my life. And I think we live in a time right now where it's so easy to put on a facade or put on this mask and be like, oh, this person looks cool on social media, but then you meet him in person, they're a dick, and you're like, wow, this is who you really are. This sucks, but like you're an incredible leader, not only behind the screen, so to speak, with Instagram and social media, but like legitimately in person because you care. And that comes across in what you do, but like also your business, like how you operate in a financial sense with your business. It all plays through, and I love that you're inspiring people to lead that way of life.
You gotta have gratitude, man. Like a lot of people in business, they feel like the world owes them something. Like I've tried to flip that on its head. I feel like the world owes me nothing. Nobody owes me anything. Nobody has to follow me on social media. Nobody has to buy Keto Brick. But if I put my best foot forward and they want to, I owe them everything. And if I have that mentality of gratitude towards them, it's like I put forth authentic content, I put forth genuine content, and then I put forth an image of myself that is true and authentic that people actually want to associate with. Right.
And so let's jump into that. Talk a little bit about why you start. Like, how did Keto Brick even start? Like, what was the concept behind that? And then we'll get into like where it's at now.
So Keto Brick was never even supposed to be a product. It was actually when I was doing my prep with keto for the first time. I was in Washington State and I was trying to find, like, I was working 4 different jobs at the time. I had quit the railroad and I was so broke, man. I was beyond broke. And I quit the railroad, didn't have any money coming in, working a bunch of odd-end jobs to make ends meet, and life was crazy. And I was trying to find a way to eat my macros and then just take the guesswork out of meal prep. So I started fooling around in the kitchen, made this blob. It was not a brick like it is now. It was just a blob. And had all the macros, had the ratios I wanted, had everything I needed, and it was shelf stable. And I'm like, okay, this is good. So I had it on one of my YouTube videos, like during my prep series. And somebody was like, man, this is cool. Where can I get this? What's the recipe? Where can I buy this? And I'm like, oh, it's just nothing, something I'm fooling around with. And my mom kept seeing these comments pop up. She's like, Sonny boy, you got to start selling these things. And I'm like, nah, it's not anything I want to fool with. I don't want to have a physical product. I don't want to have all that overhead. And then one day I'm just like, you know what? screw it, Crystal, let's figure this out. So she started digging into like health code rules, what all you have to do to like get a commercial kitchen license, all that stuff. I started digging into marketing and having physical products. And the next thing you know, we're making these things. We're traveling like 3 hours one way to make them in the kitchen, 3 hours back, getting no sleep, making them all by hand. And then they'd start selling out. We do a launch, they'd sell out. They'd sell out in like minutes, man. Like we had the first night we produced them at scale, it was her and I mixing them one brick at a time with a measuring cup and a fork. Oh, and we made 160 bricks or something like that. And we posted them on social media, and they sold out in like in a couple minutes. And we're just like wide-eyed looking at each other like, what just happened? And we just started scaling up from there, man. We started getting into like, suppliers, getting better wholesale pricing. Now we have this huge compound of a warehouse with like employees. We just spent a ton of money on this machine that I just got up and running before I jumped on this podcast, and it's going to be a game changer for us. Like it just keeps getting better and better.
Amazing, man. Well, I got chills just hearing that, because a lot of times people are afraid to take that step, right? They're afraid to take risks, and like seeing like you come through on that and you guys like teaming up and go, why not? Like, let's try and make this. And I love the grind. Like, I love the concept. People think, oh, it's just super easy to do. Like, oh, just launch something. But like, you're there driving 3 hours, mixing stuff up, putting it in a thing, and the community respects you, and they're like, whatever this guy puts out, I'm in. Like, it doesn't matter if it's chalk, I'm buying it and I'm gonna eat it. Like, you know what I mean? So I love that. And now the best part about it is it tastes delicious. It's incredible. It's got incredible macros. Like, it's awesome. So and it just continues to get better. You're launching new flavors and stuff. It's amazing, man.
Man, we got 2 flavors that I just formulated this week that are literally gonna knock your socks off, man. Like, they are the bomb. Pretty good.
Oh my god!
I don't know if this podcast is going live, but I'm gonna send you some of these new flavors, and you're gonna have to try them.
I can't wait, man. You guys are killing it, and I love watching you continue to grow. I love the concept that like you're now putting in new machinery. Like it was a mix by hand sort of thing, and it's amazing because I think it takes, business-wise, it takes that unique aspect about, and you remind me a lot of like the Quest story, right? Like Quest Nutrition. So I know the guys who started that. They're great human beings. They're great people. But like, it was a woman who was making bars in her kitchen for her husband to take to work with him. And she literally was like making them by hand, and their story is incredible. They went through tons of trials and tribulations where they were literally making them out of their kitchen to start, and then eventually they scaled up, and now they're Quest Nutrition, $1 billion company. But it takes something unique to start with a good mission, which you guys have, and a great product. And so I'm super excited to see everything that's happening with you guys, and just anything I could ever do to help, man. You guys are incredible people.
I appreciate it, man. We're just, like I said, it always goes back to gratitude and just being grateful, because none of this would be possible without the people that have been with us from the beginning and continue to like join our team. I mean, I'm constantly nervous on launch days. Like when we launch a new flavor of brick, I'm like, oh man, are people gonna even want this thing? But then it sells out, and it's just like, I don't know, man. I just sit there in my chair at the computer. As soon as I hit the launch button, I see the orders coming in, and I just sit back in my chair and I'm like, man, this is the coolest thing ever. I owe everybody so much. Like, I just overflowing with gratitude, man.
And that's what it's all about. And I think there's a lot that can be learned here from just you and Crystal and everything you guys are doing, in a sense that, like I said, you can literally put out whatever you wanted. Like, and I think people would buy it because they love you and they love what you guys are doing, and they believe in the mission and the vision of what you're doing. And it just so happens that you also have an incredible product on top of that. So like, it's a double win for everyone in the community to see that. And I think a lot of times, like you said earlier, people go into something, and I'm sure people are going to listen to this and be like, oh, I have a great idea. And they go into it. It's, what's your intention? Like, is your intention to go in and just try and make something to make a buck? Or are you really trying to put out good quality stuff, good quality information, and truly just help people? And that's what you guys were doing from the beginning, before you even thought about, hey, how can I make a business out of this sort of thing?
Yeah, for sure, man. I appreciate that.
That's huge, man. What's on the horizon other than new flavors? Because I know you're doing a ton of stuff, not only with Keto Brick, but you have programs. You're working with people. What's on the horizon? What can people expect from you, Crystal? What else do you guys have going on?
All right, so Well, Keto Brick obviously is going to keep growing. We're going to keep building up that as much as possible. We've got the Live Savage apparel, which we just launched not too long ago. So we got our own clothing line and whatnot coming out. But Crystal's launching Lady Savage, which is going to be kind of like her own female spin on, ketogenic performance for athletes and just in general. So she's going to have her own branding coming out there with the Lady Savage. And then as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to have to take the gloves off again, man. It's been a little while since I've competed. I've had a productive off season, so I'm going to take the gloves off again and show people how it's done. Because there's a lot of questions coming out there right now, and people, things that I thought I proved when I did my last competition, those questions are bubbling up again. So I'm going to have to just silence some people, I guess.
I love it, man. Coming out of retirement.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Now, when isn't there a bodybuilding show coming up this year? Is there anything this year, or are you thinking in 2020?
Not that I'm competing. It'll be 2020 for sure. I'll start prepping probably, and I haven't told this to anybody yet, man. You're hearing it for the first time on this podcast.
I love it.
Yeah, I'll start prepping again in November.
Awesome, brother, man. I love it. You're gonna, at some point, if you make your way through Florida, we'll have to take you to the lab and do all types of testing and document it all.
Yeah, man. I really want to do that because I'm curious. I feel like I've got a unique perspective because I'm strict keto, like I'm not doing any of the carb ups or anything that are like super hot right now. Mm-hmm. This is a pretty controversial topic, but I've been just strict keto the whole time. So I'm curious to see from like a muscle biopsy standpoint if there's any difference in like how that's been made up or whatnot. I just want to get more data because there's not a whole lot of research from people that have been adapted for years, because I feel like that's got a definite difference in how your body responds metabolically, hormonally, intramuscularly. There's just so many changes that happen when you've been adapted for years and years and years. And any more research that I can find on that, that's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, and Dr. Volek's study showed that. Like these guys that have been adapted for over, I believe it was like 24 months, so 2 years, they're able to regenerate glycogen. They still have the same amount of glycogen levels as people who are eating carbs, and their ability to replenish glycogen even without carbohydrates. So like after their endurance run, they gave them a fat shake. Like it had like 6% carbohydrates in it, versus the group that took in a ton of carbohydrates, and they both replenished glycogen to the same degree.
Yeah, so. And there's a whole bunch of arguments as far as like which is the most efficient for building muscle. There's just a whole bunch of arguments going on right now, man. And like I wanted to definitely, I don't have anything against people that are doing the carb ups, but I want to definitely be a case study for people that are strict keto, that you can build muscle, you can get the pumps, you can get the vascularity, you can perform at a higher rate. Kind of going back to that long game mentality, man. Like if you're strict keto for X number of years, that's when the magic starts happening.
Right, and you've never dabbled with carb ups or saw a need for them, right?
No, not since I've been keto, man. I've been strict keto for 5 years now.
That's incredible. And what do you do pre-workout and post-workout?
So I train fasted generally, and I've actually just started training in the afternoon, so I'll have a meal at some point in the day. But as far as pre-workout nutrition, sometimes I'll have like a BHB drink intra-workout, simply honestly more for the electrolytes than anything, just as an easy way to get some sodium and potassium in. But I don't really I'll drink some caffeine, have some kind of caffeine intake, and then post-workout, nothing. I'll eat a good dense meal within a few hours of training, but that's it. There's no specific hack to it at all. Just train hard and heavy and give your body nutrient-dense foods and keep it strict keto, man. Let the magic happen. I
love it, man. I'm excited to see that package whenever you take off the gloves and compete again. I'm excited for you, man. I love what you're doing, and super, super supportive of it.
Appreciate it, brother.
Last question, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think I know what you're going to say, but I ask this to everyone that's on the podcast. I say, God forbid something were to happen tomorrow, what legacy do you want Keto Savage, Robert Sikes, what legacy do you want to leave on the world, and do you want people to remember you for?
Oof, man, there's a lot of different ways I could word this, but the main thing being, kind of like we've said multiple times, having a long game approach. Like you live one life, like you will die. So you have to live a life that you are proud to live. Like I could literally die today and I wouldn't hang my head. Like I would be proud of what I've done thus far. I can hold my head up high for what I've accomplished thus far because I've done it with integrity. I haven't had to stab anybody in the back. I've done things that I'm passionate about. I love my life. I wouldn't live it any differently. Everybody should have that mentality. Find something you're passionate about, attack it with everything in your body, every fiber in your being, day in, day out. And then when it's over, it's over. And you can rest at peace knowing that you gave it your all.
Man, that just gave me the chills. You inspire me daily, man. I know so many people are going to get so much more out of this podcast than just a keto conversation. I think you're a huge inspiration. Like going back to what I said in the beginning, you're just an incredible human being. I think the world, not just the keto community, I think the world needs more people like you, Crystal. What you guys are doing, I think, inspires people, again, beyond a diet. It's beyond a diet conversation. This is a life conversation, and I think what you're doing is just absolutely phenomenal, man.
Hey, man, that means the world to me. I appreciate that. I appreciate your support more than you can ever know. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, man, don't hesitate to reach out.
Vice versa, brother. Last thing, where can people find you? Where can people contact you? I know you're super active on social media, your website. Where can they find you? Where can they get Keto Bricks, all that stuff?
Anything for me is just Keto Savage. So Keto Savage on YouTube, Instagram, the website, et cetera, et cetera. Keto Brick for the bricks, ketobrick.com, Keto Brick on Instagram. And then the Live Savage Apparel is livesavageapparel.com.
Awesome, brother. We'll link all that up in the show notes. But again, man, really appreciate you. Thank you for coming on the show. Appreciate everything you do. Again, not only for the community, but just for the world, man. You fire me up. You inspire me to just be a better human being. So I appreciate you.
Hey, man, I appreciate you, brother. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, brother. Guys, make sure you go follow him. He's incredible. Him and his wife, Crystal, are just doing amazing work. Appreciate you, and we'll talk to you guys soon.